The loss of loved ones can change you, and when that loss comes at the hands of massacring predators, it can turn the tide. Predator Hunters is a 3-volume series that brings back protagonists from past series and puts them into a new perspective. How do you live after surviving a predator hunt? How do you live after hunting the hunters? What happens when a mysterious and ancient organization comes knocking at the door? Do you answer, or do you wait for the hunt to begin? Find out this and more in this last Predator series published by Dark Horse Comics. But before I begin, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous long reads. And now, let's begin. Predator Hunters. Why? Issue number 1. New World. 3 malnourished and disheveled men can be seen running through the woods. One of them is Marcel, and he is the one leading his friends towards the trail they used to get this far inland. They are being chased by something monstrous, something that has them scared for their lives. Marcel finally manages to lead them to the trail they were searching for, but that is exactly what the Yautja chasing them were counting on. As soon as Marcel steps on the trail, he is hoisted into the air by a trap, and by the time his friends can gather their bearings, it's already too late. Marcel lets out a horrific scream, and then his blood rains down on his friends from above. The second guy forces the Caucasian man to flee with him before they too suffer the same fate. However, this is when they stumble upon the Yautja's trophy shrine, which causes them to tremble with horror. Various human skulls adorn this shrine, and it is then that the Caucasian man hears Marcel calling out to him. He instinctively responds, but this is when the other man forces him to stay quiet. Marcel is dead, and whatever is calling out to them isn't Marcel. They slide down a nearby fall to reach the river and then follow it out to the sea. The men think that soon they will be free from this hell. However, when they reach the sea, they realize that they are on a cliff. This is when the Yautja shows up and throws down his helmet for this final confrontation. If you notice, there is a lot that is different about this Yautja. Most of his gear has been fashioned out of wood and bones, and he seems to be missing his wrist gauntlet as well. The second man tries to fight the Yautja, but he ends up decapitating him with a single swipe of his makeshift sword. The Caucasian man trembles as the Yautja aims for him next. However, this is when he decides to take his chances by plunging into the sea below. The Yautja tackles him, and he tries to take the monster down with him by grabbing onto his shoulders, but all he grabs are the Yautja's dreadlocks, which promptly break. The man plunges into the sea, and the Yautja waits on the cliff to see if the man emerges from the water. When he doesn't, he grabs the other man's decapitated head, his wooden mask, and walks away. However, this is when the Caucasian man's hand emerges from the water while still clutching onto the Yautja's dreadlocks. We then catch up with Enko Nakai, the survivor of the previous story arc, Predator. Big game. Nakai is an ex-soldier, but after surviving the ordeal, he has decided to stay low and work at a remote gas station that also has a snake pit and an alien space monster as its other attractions. His employer, however, is an old cowboy who doesn't take kindly to his Native American origins and is quite racist towards him. And every minute Nakai spends with his employer, the angrier he gets. The old man forces Nakai to hurry up with the oil change and then tells him to feed the snakes in the snake pit once he is done. As the old man walks away, a huge black car parks at the gas station as 3 people step out of it. They approach Nakai, who instantly brushes them off and points them towards the snake pit instead. This is when the woman reveals that they are here for Nakai, who visibly gets annoyed by this revelation. Nakai was hounded by a lot of people after his ordeal, and so he plainly tells them that he doesn't want to talk to them, whether they are the press or the FBI. However, this is when the woman pulls out a pile of cash from her pocket and tells Nakai that they are willing to pay him if he simply listens to their proposition. She reveals that they don't work for the government and then introduces herself. This is Jaya Soames, the blonde man is Tyler Swain, and the man with the mustache is Rafael Herrera. Jaya reveals that they know about the incident at Cole Army Base and that the alien Nakai encountered is what they call a predator. This is when Nakai lashes out because going through that entire ordeal was taxing on him. A predator landed near his army base, took out half of the force and then nuked the base. Nakai was hungry for revenge, and thankfully he was on his home turf, the land of his people, which is why he was able to eventually defeat the predator and cut his head off. Nakai was proud of his achievement, and he rightly should be, according to his 3 new friends, and this is when he was approached by the the feds. They tried to recruit Nakai in a special ops unit designed to hunt down the predators, but because they were only interested in alien technology, Nakai declined their offer. Because Nakai personally wants revenge, and he wants to hunt down and kill every predator that he can get his hands on. He then decides to change the subject and leads them to the gas station's alien space monster exhibit. It's a dark room behind red curtains that seemingly displays a decomposing Yautja corpse, which is contained in a glass case, while the walls are lined with newspaper articles about UFOs. Swain has been quite cold towards Nakai, and he uses this opportunity to belittle him by mocking the size of the predator corpse and pretending that it isn't even real. Raphael steps in to calm down the situation and comments that the government does a great job of hiding close encounters, and this is when Nakai reveals that he too was let go by the army after he refused the feds. They simply labelled him a psycho and sent him packing. Swain once again tries to make a joke about Native Americans, and this is when Raphael is forced to step in and stop Nakai from knocking Swain out. When Raphael isn't able to get a handle on things and Swain continues to antagonise Nakai, Jaya steps in and offers Nakai a place on her team. Nakai isn't a zookeeper who looks after snakes. He is a warrior, and Jaya wants him to join their war. Jaya puts Nakai's entire life into perspective, and it seems it's too much for him to take. Nakai doesn't say a word, and simply shows the three of them the shortest way out of the room. Jaya understands his feelings, but she makes sure to hand him her card before leaving in case Nakai changes his mind. As Jaya steps out of the gas station, Nakai's employer thanks her and then berates Nakai for not having fed the snakes yet in front of her. Nakai snaps back by telling the old man that he is preparing the desert, and this is when the old man squares up to him. Nakai, having had enough, lets go of all the mice meant to be fed to the snakes and then sets the snakes free on the old man. While the old man cowers and hangs by a fence, Nakai walks out and hitches a ride with his three new friends. Nakai is interested in their proposition, but he hasn't made a decision yet. If he is going to war by their side, then Nakai wants to know them and why they are doing this. He asks Herrera first, who tells him that he used to own a cocaine processing lab deep in the jungle. Life was good until the police, in a joint operation with the military and the DEA, decided to ambush them in the middle of the night. The authorities waited until every major person involved in the operation was on the scene, and then they opened fire. It was a massacre, not because of the authorities, but because of the uninvited predator who decided to use the processing plant as his hunting grounds for the night. Herrera eventually ended up killing the predator, but the victory was hollow. His organisation was almost destroyed, and what was left was finished off by his rival, including his family. To Herrera, he survived for a reason. God saved him for a reason, and that reason is to atone for his sins and to do right by hunting down predators. Nakai then moves on to Swain, who reveals that he encountered a predator while he was deployed in Afghanistan. He was working for a private contractor designated to ferry supplies to a base in Kandahar, when one day, out of nowhere, their convoy was hit by the Taliban. They took out vehicles at the front and back of the convoy, which essentially trapped them in the middle of the street. Swain was knocked out by a mortar round that missed him by a few feet, and when he woke up, the battle was already over, and a predator was busy collecting his trophies from the battlefield. Swain wanted to fight back, but he was too injured to move or pick up a rifle. Swain then cuts the tension of this heavy story by joking that he is here to collect his own share of trophies and to get paid handsomely. And now it's time for Jaya's story, and it turns out she has an entangled past with the predators that goes back a few generations. It all started with her great-grandfather, Captain Edward Soames, who was tasked by the Diogenes Club to track down the serial murderer, Healed Jack, in late 19th century London. Her great-grandfather, however, soon discovered that the serial killer wasn't human after all. It was a predator who had decided to use the back alleys of London as his hunting grounds during the night. Soames somehow managed to take down the predator using the weapons of the day, and after that, his fame reached new heights. After that, he returned to India and worked with the Maharajas to continue his hunt under the guise of taking down man-killing tigers. Her great-grandfather grew to love the hunt, and he never really stopped until his dying day. His skills and knowledge were passed on through generations, and this is when we see Jaya as a kid staring at the stuffed head of a predator mounted on the wall of her family home. This is when Jaya offers Nakai a place on her team once again, and he momentarily tricks them into thinking that he is declining the offer by requesting them to drop him off at home. However, once he has everyone falling for his trick, Nakai reveals that he is going home to pack up his stuff. Predator: Hunters 1, Issue Number 2, Call of the Wild. We are now introduced to Mandy Graves aboard the shipping vessel Durga, which has been disguised to look like a science research vessel. Mandy is deep in the facility, busy training, while being haunted by the deaths of all her teammates at the hands of the Bad Blood Predator. Mandy is the sole survivor of the Bad Blood story arc. Let us know in the comments if you would be interested in a video on that. Mandy groans and strains with each death that she recalls, until she finally watches herself shoot the Predator, and that is when she stops training. That morning, Jaya and the rest of them arrived aboard the vessel on a helicopter, and upon arriving, Jaya immediately ordered the captain to prepare the ship for sailing. She then introduces everyone to Mandy, and this is when Nakai decides to shake her hand. Mandy is wary about shaking Nakai's hand, and when Swain and he end up making fun of her, Mandy grabs his hand and throws Nakai to the ground. Nakai apologizes, but once Mandy has walked off, he confesses that he is attracted to her. Jaya then gathers everyone in the conference room and informs them about the secrecy of this operation. They've all been assigned laptops that meet their security standards, which means no storage, no file transfer, or print capability. Mission briefs are stored only on the ship's secured servers. She then gets to the meat of the information and tells them that their sources recently informed them about a predator encounter at a remote island. She then recounts the events that we witnessed on the island at the start of the first issue, this time with more added details. The 3 fishermen we were introduced to were part of a fishing vessel from Fiji that had capsized in the harsh weather. The 3 men managed to escape aboard a raft with minimal supplies, and by the time they reached the island almost a week later, they were on the brink of death. However, the men would soon discover that the island wasn't uninhabited. They were captured and caged, treated like prey, and during this time, they were able to observe very well that whatever this thing was, it wasn't human. The predator kept the men in a cage for a few days, until one morning when miraculously, they found their cage open and 3 knives waiting for them. What they didn't know was the fact that this was the beginning of the hunt, and soon they were hunted. 2 of them died brutal deaths, but one managed to somehow survive a big fall into the water. This survivor decided to take his chances with the sea and left the island in the raft they had come in on. The man was found a few days later by a New Zealand trawler. The man soon succumbed to his injuries and condition, but before passing away, he managed to recount the entire tale to the captain. This is when the others begin rationalizing the story, and Herrera starts by questioning why the man didn't escape to the other nearby islands. This is when Jaya tells them all that the fishing vessel from Fiji was likely fishing in illegal waters, a particular international marine reserve that has been set aside for the Bunting Islands. It is one of the most isolated places on Earth, with no land in either cardinal direction for at least 1,000 nautical miles. In this archipelago, the only inhabited island is Amelia Island, which houses a small community established by Malcolm Bunting in the 1800s. The nearby island, Kehua, is uninhabited and likely the one where the 3 fishermen crashed. Jaya then briefs everyone on the history of the islands and how Malcolm Bunting slowly acquired them during his lifetime. The colony was started in conjunction with friends and employees and instantly flourished. The current stewardship of the island lies with his great-grandson, Dr. Henry Bunting, who is renowned for his work in the medical field. They don't have official clearance to visit the islands, and so they are going to have to handle this visit tactfully. Nakai has heard enough. To him, this just seems like a waste of a lot of money based on rumours and unsubstantiated claims. This is when Jaya pulls out the dreadlocks that the fisherman tore off the predator and shows it to everyone. This proof is seemingly enough to convince Nakai, but he then brings up the issue of their approach. Predators have alien technology that is no match for the weapons at their disposal, but this is when Jaya proves him wrong by leading him into the armory. They have hundreds of high-caliber rifles at their disposal, but when even this doesn't convince Nakai, she shows him her secret room full of predator gear. Turns out, the Somes have been studying the alien gear for years and have seemingly developed a few countermeasures, namely a pair of tactical facewear that renders their chameleon field useless. This is when we see Mandy haunted by the memories of the Bad Blood Predator as she trains in the gym while Nakai and Swain spar with each other in the background. Swain gets the better of him, and when, in the heat of the moment, Nakai challenges Jaya, she ends up besting him as well. This is not what they expected of him. Nakai Nakai was supposed to be a renowned warrior who took down a predator on his own, but this doesn't mean he isn't part of their team. It just means that he needs to work hard, and he has 2 weeks to do so. This is also when we get a glimpse into Jaya's past, how she became a hunter as soon as she was of age, and how she suffered severe scars during her first fight with a predator. But after she realized the havoc and the trail of blood left by these predators, and how they could wipe out a city completely, she decided to become the hunter and not the hunted. 2 weeks later, the ship arrives at the Bunting Islands, and the team prepares to embark. All of them have been handed detailed backstories to maintain their cover, and it's the reason why they will be embarking on their first voyage unarmed. As they approach Amelia in a smaller boat, the dock is slowly filled by curious residents, and when they disembark, they are warmly welcomed by all of them, including the kids. Henry Bunting also welcomes them with open arms, and this is when they get a glimpse of the neighbouring Kahua Island, followed by the predator's current whereabouts. The Yautja expertly hunts a wild boar with his bare hands and then roasts it for supper. Once the predator is done eating most of the meat, he tosses the remaining pieces into a nearby cage, where it turns out that it has captured yet another human as his prisoner. Predator Hunters 1, Issue number 3, Adventures in Paradise. Stealth drones take off from Durga, and once they reach Kahua, what they discover leaves most of the crew aboard the vessel speechless. It's a huge memento of sorts, a structure full of trophies the predator seems to have gathered over the years. There are at least a dozen human skulls that adorn it, along with many other bones. The crew marks the coordinates for further evaluation and calls back the drones. However, the crew fails to notice that they have been spotted, and the predator now knows that someone is hunting him. We then see Jaya and the rest being treated to a hefty feast by Henry Bunting. They all thank him for the amazing food, and the subsequent conversation gives us a glimpse into the type of man Bunting is. He is eccentric and has a taste for the spiritual, and though he calls the settlement a community, Bunting is clearly leading what looks a lot like a cult. When Bunting questions the crew about their visit, Jaya takes charge and pretends that they are all here to research illegal poaching and reef destruction in restricted international marine waters. Bunting then goes on a rant about protecting the environment and the earth, and how it was one of the reasons why his great-grandfather established this settlement. He didn't want to be a part of the destructive ways of the world. He wanted a self-sustained community, a habitat that didn't destroy nature, a bastion against the despoiling of God's creation that man was indulging in. Bunting then reveals that with his family's aid and the businesses he still runs in New Zealand, he is able to support the community. Food and other resources that they lack in Amelia are regularly imported by Bunting. Herrera uses this pause in the conversation to probe Bunting about their neighbouring island, Kahua, and this is when the steward reveals that the island is uninhabited and was originally planned to be a lush and thriving hunting ground by his great-grandfather. He imported and tried to inhabit Kahua with many exotic species, but ultimately it was a failed endeavour. Now, the island is infested by nasty Carpathian boars, as well as highly venomous Brazilian jararaca vipers. He also reveals that no one has set foot on the island in at least a decade, and he himself is afraid of it because he doesn't like snakes. This is when he turns to Nakai and probes him about his job. After all, among all of them, Nakai is the one who looks the most out of place. Nakai fumbles and pretends to be an ex-military chopper pilot, and it's clear that this isn't the backstory he was assigned by Jaya. Bunting reveals that he has dozens more questions for them, and that he is very curious about their mission. He then invites the entire crew of Durga to the island for a feast, but Jaya politely declines the offer by joking that if she did allow them to visit Amelia, she is afraid that they would decide to stay here for the rest of their lives. She also uses this opportunity to end the dinner, and after wishing everyone a hearty goodbye, they begin to leave the island. However, this is when a female servant pulls Jaya aside, hugs her, and in hushed tones begs her to come back to the island to take her away. For some reason, this girl is scared for her life, and we see her shedding tears as their boat leaves the island. Once aboard the ship, Jaya reprimands Nakai for skipping his backstory. However, this transgression is quickly overshadowed by the footage from the island. After witnessing the footage, she orders her strike team to get ready instantly, and this is when we see that all of them have specialised gear, including the visor that allows them to see predators even if they are using the chameleon field. When they are about to leave, Jaya pulls Nakai aside and orders him to stay behind and let others take the lead because he is still rusty, and Swain uses this moment to belittle Nakai. We then see the strike team approaching Kahua on 2 dinghies, and once again, Swain passes a racist remark on Nakai, which doesn't sit well with him. Nakai decides to control his anger, and the strike team cuts off the engines once they are a few hundred feet from the island. They row the rest of the way, and we see Swain antagonize Mandy as well once they disembark. Herrera orders everyone to turn on the cooling units in their suits and to switch to night vision. The strike team then sneaks their way through the woods, and this is when Nakai notices a pair of glowing eyes in the trees. He fears the worst, but thankfully, it turns out to be a tiger, and Nakai manages to swat it away without a scratch, thanks to his full body armor. However, while the team is distracted by this debacle, one of them gets gored by a spear that is seemingly fired out of nowhere. Everyone is shocked, and Herrera has to take charge and order everyone into cover. He then reassures them that they have the upper hand because though the predator can't see them, they can see it thanks to the thermal vision mode on their visors. Once Herrera spots the creature, he opens fire, and the rest of them follow his lead. Mandy discovers a blood trail, and her hunger for revenge takes over her. Mandy takes off running into the forest after the predator all by herself, and this is when she realizes that she has lost the creature. They continue searching, and this is when Mandy spots a trail of green blood leading into the tree line. However, by the time she can warn the others about it, the predator attacks again and manages to hack another one of them to death. He tries to sneak away, but the strike team spots him and shoots him multiple times. The Yautja somehow survives the assault, and though this is an impressive feat, Herrera and the rest of them fire again to make sure he stays dead. Herrera is the one who deals the final blow and blows off the predator's head at close range. Nakai, however, is puzzled by this encounter. This Yautja has no tech, not even proper weapons. It's primitive. This is when they spot the old man in a cage nearby, and Nakai frees him when requested to do so. The old man is delirious, and he keeps begging all of them to leave the island. Herrera thinks that the man is simply traumatized and tries to calm him down by claiming they have taken down the predator. However, this is when the old man reveals that the island wasn't inhabited by a single predator. There were 4 of them, and the 3 remaining Yautja are likely itching for revenge. Predator, Hunters 1 star, issue number 4. 3 heads are better than 1. We catch up with the strike team in the heat of action as Jaya contacts them and demands a report. Herrera gets in touch with them and tells them that there has been an unexpected development. Instead of a single target, the island houses 3 more of them, and now they also have a survivor to protect. 4 targets in total weren't a part of the plan, and so Jaya orders them to gather any tech they can from the fallen predator and to then return to the ship. Swain eyes the corpse and informs Jaya over the radio that the predator was primitive and doesn't really have any gear apart from bone spears and wooden masks. This is when the old man they rescued begins to panic because all of them are acting as if the battle has been won, but by now it's already too late. This is when a huge wooden spiked club comes flying through the air and lodges in the head of the soldier beside the old man, which kills him instantly. Everyone begins firing in every direction out of panic, and Herrera has to regroup them once again. He orders everyone to escape into the woods where their thermal signatures will be hidden once again, while he and Bradford provide cover fire. However, as the assault continues, even Herrera and Bradford are forced to retreat when they realise that the other predators have makeshift projectiles of their own. Herrera fires back, but when he isn't able to spot any of the Yautja, he realises that the Yautja can see them despite their specialised gear. Bradford and Herrera sprint after the rest of the team, and this is when we see the 3 predators jump out of the tree line and actively pursue the 2 of them. We then catch up with the team, and Nakai seems to have taken charge. He orders Swain to stay behind in order to provide support for Herrera and Bradford. Swain doesn't like taking orders, but this is when he is distracted by the sound of rustling branches behind him, and he watches in horror as one of the predators stabs Bradford through the torso right in front of him. Swain watches in horror as the predator then pulls out Bradford's skull and spine, and before the predator can spot him, Swain buckles and runs away. Nakai, meanwhile, is about to order Mandy to check in on Swain, but he quickly realises that she is already gone. We then see Mandy catch up with Swain, and though she questions him about Herrera again and again, Swain ignores her questions and tells her that they need to escape because he is being actively followed. Mandy knows Swain is a coward and after telling him to go to hell, she takes off running into the woods to face the predators on her own. Mandy is quickly face to face with one of them, and instead of using her rifle, she drops it on the ground and pulls out a knife and challenges him to an honourable duel. However, before the confrontation ensues, Nakai arrives on the scene and causes the predator to escape by tossing a frag grenade. Mandy, however, is delirious and driven by her lust for revenge. She curses Nakai and tells him that she was supposed to die today and that he should have let her die. Nakai ignores this statement and helps her escape, and while boarding their dinghies in the sea, he questions Mandy and Swain about Herrera's fate over and over again. Mandy doesn't answer because she knows what Swain did, and Swain simply chooses to go back to the Durga in the other dinghy. We then see that Herrera has been captured by the 3 predators and is currently strung upside down by his feet. As Herrera wakes up, he watches in surprise as one of the predators uses his voice to mock him. The predator then comes close to Herrera and screams in his face, but Herrera doesn't back down, and he retaliates with a few choice words of his own. The predator then uses Herrera's own knife to slice off his ear and then inserts it into his necklace, which has other human ears as well. As soon as the team boards the ship, Mandy lashes out at Swain in front of everyone because Herrera is dead because he chickened out. Swain, however, is nasty and tells everyone that Mandy is having another one of her anger episodes because she forgot her meds. But Mandy knows loss. She didn't want to lose another crew member ever. Yet today, they have lost many, and Herrera could have been saved if Swain had done his job. She leaps at him and punches him once, and this is when Nakai and the rest step in to pull her away. They lead Mandy away as she screams that Swain left Herrera to die, and this scene was enough for Jaya to pull Swain aside. She demands answers, but Swain tries to avoid the situation by claiming that he needs to be alone. Jaya doesn't allow that to happen, and Swain reluctantly reveals that he choked today, just like back then in Afghanistan. Jaya is puzzled by this statement, and this is when Swain reveals that his Afghanistan story was a partial lie. They weren't ambushed by Taliban, but a predator, and while his team fought to their deaths around him, Swain simply hid and cowered in fear until the predator left. He had a clear shot at the creature while it was collecting trophies, but even then, Swain couldn't force himself enough to pull the trigger. Jaya is appalled by Swain. She trusted him. The entire team trusted him. Herrera trusted him to do the job, but turns out Swain is just a miserable failure and a liar. We then see Nakai console Mandy. He knows how she feels. He too lost his entire team to a predator, and just like her, he too wishes he had died with his team. But he then tells her that people like them survive for a reason, and that reason, in most cases, is sweet revenge that ensures this doesn't happen again. Mandy relates to Nakai, and for now, it seems that she agrees with him. The old man they rescued now approaches Jaya and begs her to leave this area as soon as possible. Just like Herrera, Jaya thinks that the man is traumatized and tries to pacify him and tell him that they need to protect Amelia from the creatures on Kahua. And this is when the old man looks at her in bafflement and screams, "Protection! Protection! Lady, what are you talking about? Don't you understand? This is their show." This is when we see 2 boats full of the islanders slowly approaching their vessel while dressed in wooden Yautja gear, similar to the ones the team encountered on Kahua. Predator, Hunters 1, Issue Number 5, The Human Factor. Dr. Bunting approaches Durga while announcing his instructions over a loudspeaker. He orders them to lay down their arms and surrender to him and the islanders because he has rigged their entire ship with remotely controlled mines. And he knows that neither Jaya nor the rest of them will trust him. So he triggers a dummy mine that he had planted near the vessel to prove his point. Jaya orders her crew to stand down, and when she turns around, she watches in horror as the islanders dressed in Yautja gear board her vessel while brandishing weapons similar to the predators her team encountered at Kahua. Once aboard, the islanders round up the crew and trap them in secured rooms, while Bunting takes care of his 4 special guests, Jaya, Nakai, Swain and Mandy, on his own. He is surprised to find the old man still alive after he was seemingly exiled to his death on Kahua, and he speculates that the predators might have taken him in as their pet. After securing the ship, Bunting forces our 4 protagonists to board his boat as he, along with 24 islanders, makes their way to Kahua to carry out a ceremony that is reserved for unexpected visitors. A ceremony that has become a tradition over the years. Jaya tries to warn him about the predators, thinking that Bunting doesn't know the true nature of the creatures that he is dealing with. But this is when Bunting mocks her. His people have been on this island for hundreds of years, and he reveals that when his great-grandfather first settled the islands, the settlement wasn't doing so well. There was tension among them all, and they needed a reason to band together. And this is when his prayers were answered one night, when a predator ship crashed near Amelia. The ship sank instantly, and around a dozen predators managed to survive the crash, albeit with a lot of injuries. However, as soon as they swam to Amelia, it didn't take them long to continue their hunting ways. They started by flaying a few of the islanders as a warning first, but Henry's grandfather took this act as a declaration of war. He rallied all the islanders and fought the predators, whom the islanders call exiles. They lost a lot of their men with each exile they took down, but the war against these creatures made his settlement stronger. His people banded together, and eventually they grew a taste for the hunt. After killing many of the exiles, Henry's great-grandfather decided to capture and imprison the rest of them. Malcolm Bunting realized then that his people had now become primal. They had become more. They no longer lived in nature. Nature lived in them. He starved the remaining 4 exiles that they had captured until they could be led to Kahua, where they could be stranded for years to come. His plan to make Kahua the greatest game reserve had finally come true, and so the islanders began their game. Whenever the exiles tried to escape, they reached Amelia, where they were hunted and forced to return to Kahua. The islanders also occasionally introduced new game to Kahua, a tiger here and there, sometimes a European boar, but the exiles quickly learnt their fate and eventually began to thrive. Over the years, the colonists learned from the exiles, until eventually the two were indistinguishable. Henry Bunting is in his megalomaniac mode, and he claims that the islanders are blessed with a deadly gift. They have been washed clean of avarice, washed clean of vainglory, of any weakness. This is when Jaya interrupts him, because she has had enough. She claims that Bunting has simply brainwashed everyone, but neither Bunting nor his followers are swayed by her words. Jaya assumes that islanders are going to let the predators kill them off, but this is when Bunting reveals their ritual. Every outsider or unexpected visitor is brought to Kahua, offered a single machete, and then given a head start before the islanders eventually come for them, hunt them down and take their skulls as personal trophies. Reluctantly, our 4 protagonists pick up a machete and head into the woods as the islanders hoot and scream in the background. We then see the predators holding a memorial of sorts for their fallen comrade, and when 2 of them hear the hooting and hollering of the islanders, they quickly run towards the voices. One of them, however, stays behind. He seems to be deeply affected by the loss of his friend, and it seems that he has his own plans for the future now that another hunt has begun on the island. Nakai, Jaya, Mandy and Swain are running through the woods, and this is when Nakai suggests that they should all split up in order to increase their chances of survival. Naturally, Swain hates this idea, but everyone else agrees with Nakai and takes off running in different directions. It's not long before Mandy is spotted by 2 islanders, and one of them instantly lobs a spear at her. Mandy catches it mid-air, but pretends that she has been stabbed in the torso and falls to the ground. When the 2 islanders come near her to decapitate her, she quickly gets up and stabs him through the head with the spear. To make sure the job is done, Mandy then hacks the guy in the head with her machete and takes off running once again. Nakai, meanwhile, manages to take down 2 islanders by hiding in the trees. He uses a coconut as a distraction and then kills them both while they are distracted. Jaya, meanwhile, is driven into a corner by 3 islanders, and upon realizing that she has nowhere to run, she attacks them. She manages to take out one of them, but the other 2 ambush her from behind and hit her on the head. As Jaya accepts her fate, the predator that was paying respects to his fallen friend longer than the rest of them arrives on the scene and kills the 2 islanders. Jaya prepares for a fight to the death, but the predator spares her life and gestures for her to leave the scene. Jaya doesn't argue, and as she runs away, she encounters another islander. This one, however, is a friend, and the woman removes her mask to reveal that she is Artemis, the servant who had begged Jaya for her help. She leads Jaya to a boat that she hid nearby, and the 2 of them speed towards the vessel, hoping to take it back. As they approach, Artemis tells Jaya to dive underwater and to remove the mines while she distracts the islanders on board. Once aboard, Artemis doesn't have to do much to distract the men on board because they instantly start hitting on her. her. Once Jaya has removed the mines, she climbs aboard and heads to the army. Once Artemis sees Jaya sneaking behind the islanders, she pulls out her knife and stabs the man who had been annoying her directly in the gut. Jaya kills 2 more guards using her rifle, and this causes the remaining islanders to surrender. Jaya frees her crew, takes the islanders hostage, and then arms her chopper with missiles and ammo, while also grabbing a mysterious duffel bag. She is hungry for revenge, and it's time for some payback. As the chopper takes off, we see Nakai being chased through the woods by 2 predators, while Henry Bunting and the remaining islanders realise that a chopper is headed for them. Before they can take cover, Jaya opens fire, which takes down most of the islanders. She then fires a bomb to ensure that Bunting has died, and though he manages to survive, he is quickly found by Mandy, who ends his life instantly. Nakai, meanwhile, is cornered by the predators near a similar-looking waterfall that we saw in the first issue. Nakai prepares for his last fight, but this is when Swain appears out of nowhere and spears one of the Yautja and throws it off a waterfall. Nakai is surprised to see Swain finally grow a pair, but before the fight can continue, Jaya arrives in the chopper and shoots the second Yautja to pieces. Mandy helps the 2 men board the chopper, and this is when the 3rd predator, who spared Jaya's life, shows up on the scene. She stops Mandy from killing the creature and instead tosses the duffel bag to him as a parting gift for saving her life. As the chopper flies away, the predator opens the bag to find mint-condition Yautja gear. He quickly gears up, visits his friend's memorial, and then taps in a code on his gauntlet, which causes it to beep again and again at increasing intervals. It then gives out a loud war cry and thrusts its fist into the air, and this is where the comic ends. Predator, Hunters 2, Issue Number 1, Arms Race. We start our story in eastern Afghanistan, where a speeding van comes to a screeching stop and 4 jihadis force a CIA agent out of it. The man is begging for his life, trying to tell the men that he is a construction engineer from Canada, but the jihadis know better. They know he is a spy and that his real name is Robert Fournette. They prop the man in front of a camera on his knees and get ready to behead him. They are filming the entire thing to send a message to the Americans, and as they get ready to behead the man, he begins praying to Christ while the jihadis pray to Allah. Both their prayers not only contradict each other's actions, but their reasoning as well. But before their leader can behead the agent, another blade slices through the air and beheads the jihadi wielding the sword instead. The next second, another one of them is beheaded, and then one of them is stabbed through the chest with a comb stick. The last one gets his head smashed directly into a nearby wall. As the CIA agent's prayer comes to an end, the Yautja turns off his chameleon field and retrieves his trophy. When the agent looks up, he finds the huge predator towering over him while brandishing the leader's head proudly. The agent ends up uttering the words, "Dear God," and this phrase is added to the Predator's lexicon of phrases that he can mimic. We then head to Jaya Soam's private island at an undisclosed location in the Indian Ocean. She is currently having a meeting with her employees, and all of them want to hand in their resignations after the events at Amelia Island. According to her men, there were too many unexpected events when compared to their plan, too many factors they hadn't accounted for, and too many unknown variables. If it hadn't been for Artemis, they all would have been dead, and most of them aren't willing to offer their lives up to chance again, no matter the amount of money Jaya is willing to offer them. She accepts their resignation and tells them that a seaplane will take them to the mainland the next day, while also reminding them about the NDAs they had signed before accepting this job. Artemis doesn't like Jaya letting her men leave because on her island, they would have been killed. But this is when Jaya tells her that this is what freedom means. Swain, Mandy and Nakai walk into the room and reveal that they don't plan on quitting their jobs. Swain, this time around, is repentant. He is taking accountability for Herrera's death and is offering up his resignation in case Jaya demands it. Mandy once again takes a jab at Swain for abandoning Herrera, and this is when Jaya calms down the situation and tells everyone that she is willing to give Swain another chance. Though his performance on the Bunting Islands was less than satisfactory, they are going to need everyone possible for the next mission at hand. Nakai is surprised by this revelation, but Jaya tells them that this is going to be a simple recon mission in Afghanistan, and they won't engage the target if the conditions conditions aren't in their favour. She then shows them the footage that was filmed by the jihadis before they were all beheaded, and then shows them the last few frames that capture the predator's leg. When Mandy questions how she managed to get this footage, Jaya reveals that she has a lot of Russian sources, and one of them managed to source this footage from a CIA server in Kabul at her request. She then tells them that they can leave instantly if they are all ready, and this is when Swain's stomach drops, because Afghanistan is the place that started all of this. It's where he lost his squad and his courage. But then he rallies up his confidence because he wants to get over his fear. It's best to start where he first contracted it. We then see American forces flying to the Bunting Islands to assess the huge explosion that was recently spotted on the Kahua Island. Side note, the Kahua Island is misspelled as Tehua Island in all 4 issues of this story arc. However, for simplicity, we will continue to refer to it as Kahua. The forces discover a huge crater and minimal radiation at the site of the explosion, and this confirms that the remaining predator had triggered the self-destruct sequence on his gauntlet when it was handed over to him by Jaya. Meanwhile, the team lands in Jalalabad, Afghanistan the next morning, and Mandy is having trouble wearing a hijab in the searing heat of the area. Upon landing, they are greeted by their guide, Maluk, who does his best to joke around and put them at ease. It is also revealed that Maluk has secured an armoured truck for them upon Jaya's behest, and that they should get going quickly because they have a very long journey ahead of them, and the roads of Afghanistan aren't exactly known for being safe. As they drive, Maluk continues to joke about the condition of his country and how he has never driven a vehicle with working air conditioning or suspension, for that matter. However, it seems that the situation and the familiarity of the location are too much for Swain, because the next thing you know, Swain is begging them to stop the car. Once he gets out, he pukes his guts out, and though Maluk offers to drive slowly, Swain ignores their remarks and forces them to continue the journey. He can't let his issues slow them down, not after he is finally back in Afghanistan to earn his redemption. A few hours later, they have reached the foothills of the Hindu Kush mountain range in eastern Afghanistan, and they find the first town here brimming with armed forces. At first, they assume that it might be the Afghan National Police, but when Jaya takes a closer look using her binoculars, something spooks her to her core. Without revealing to her team what she spotted, she forces them back on the truck so that they can continue their journey because, according to her, their timeline has just been shortened by a significant amount. We then hear gunshots echoing from a remote cave in the mountains, and inside is a jihadi blindly firing away in the dark, hoping to catch his assailant off guard. However, he is quickly killed by an unseen force, and this is when the last remaining soldier begins praying. We then see that the entire floor of the cave is lined with bodies, and though the man tries to put up a fight when the Yautja uncloaks in front of him, he is quickly decapitated and taken as a trophy while the Yautja says "Dear God" in the FBI agent's voice. Predator Hunters 2, Issue Number 2, Cost of War. A band of jihadists walks on a lonely trail in the mountains at night, which is contrasted by Maluk's words as he tells our protagonists about Afghanistan, a nation that has defeated army after army, yet is defeated by its own divisions. This is when the band of jihadists is spotted by the Predator, and the next thing you know, they are attacked by a blast from his plasma caster. The jihadis try to fight back, but they are picked off easily by the blasts. The remaining individuals succumb to the Yautja's wrist blades, and when the last one tries to escape, he is stabbed through the leg by a combistic. As flames bellow in the background, the Yautja leaps on the remaining survivor like a hungry tiger, and in this moment, he looks like a supernatural entity to the man. The Predator then holds the man up by his throat and, with one swift move, rips out his skull and spine. This Yautja is more brutal than any that our protagonists have encountered before, and years of hunting in the war seem to have made him more bloodthirsty. Our protagonists listen in silence as Maluk continues to tell them about his nation while driving. According to him, Afghanistan has nothing to offer. Its people have nothing to live for, yet powerful nations keep invading it time after time, only to crush more rocks. They have nothing, but nations with everything continue coming here, and when they leave with nothing, which is all his nation had to offer in the first place. They then arrive in a remote village, and their conversation reveals reveals that people here were terrorized by jihadis for quite a while, until suddenly their tormentors began facing tons of casualties from an unknown source. The people here believe that it is a jinn sent by Allah to protect them from harm, but Jaya has other guesses for who this jinn could be. Jaya, Mandy and Nakai decide to accompany Maluk on their meeting with the village Malik, while Swain decides to stay behind and look after the truck. We then see them attending a meeting with the village elders while pretending to be aid workers, which will allow them to discuss the jihadis in the area, which should eventually allow them to question the townspeople about the jinn. The elders don't mind discussing the jihadis, but when Jaya questions them about the jinn, they angrily end the conversation. All this is being observed by a handicapped boy who decides to have a talk with Swain, who is busy self-loathing by the side of the truck. Swain is surprised by the boy's perfect English, and the latter reveals that he was taught by his father, who used to be a translator for the Americans, until he and his mother were eventually killed in a mortar attack because he didn't support the Taliban. Swain relates to the boy and confesses that he lost a lot of friends in this country as well, and this is when the boy realizes that he used to be a soldier. Swain tries to apologize to the boy for what the war has done to him, but the boy is like an old man, too wise for his age, because such is the way of life here. Not long after their death, he lost his leg to a landmine, which also killed one of his friends. He then tells Swain that the mine was Russian, a mine that was created long before he was born, and in his opinion, the war will never end in Afghanistan. There will always be war here. Swain wishes he could help the boy, and this is when the boy says that Swain might be able to, but Swain shakes his head. He won't be able to take an Afghan boy back to America, but this is when the boy reveals that he doesn't want to go to America. He wants to go to Canada because they have the best healthcare. Meanwhile, we see the Yautja uncloaking at the top of a mountain while staring at the sunset, and in his right hand is a net full of his latest trophies. He then walks into what seemingly is his hidden lair and lays down all his trophies in their dedicated spot. Unlike most predators we've seen in this arc, this one seems to collect intriguing artifacts as well, which is observed when he places a camera on a makeshift shelf in the cave. He then removes his biohelmet, and when we get to see the entire cave, we learn that it is full of weapons of war and other artifacts that he has gathered over the years. Jaya, Nakai and Mandy return from their meeting, and they all decide that it's best they leave the village because the meeting was a disaster. This is when the boy who was talking to Swain approaches Jaya and tells her that he can help them. Jaya is more sympathetic to the boy, but he is indifferent. He knows that all of them are looking for the jinn and that they are not aid workers. Jaya tries to lie to the boy, tries to tell him that they are aid workers indeed, but the boy is quite observant because most aid workers who come here think that they know what the people here need, but the four of them aren't like that. They don't talk much. They listen, observe and watch, just like hunters, and he has put two and two together and knows that they are here to hunt the jinn. Jaya tries to maintain her cover, but the boy is adamant. He promises to help them find what they seek. Because he knows what the jinn truly is, he has seen its lair and what it keeps there. The jinn isn't a force of God, it's a hunter, and it hunts for sport. According to him, no servant of God could do what he found in his cave, and that one day the same fate will fall upon his village once there are no more jihadis in the mountains to hunt down. He offers to take them to the predator's lair, and this is when Nakai chimes in and turns the offer down because they can't simply escort a child into danger. This is when the boy angrily tells them that this is his turf. He knows these mountains like the back of his hand, and that the four of them should be worried about their safety instead. Swain chimes in, calms the boy down by telling him that he believes him and believes in his ability to lead them to the lair. This is when Swain asks his name for the first time, and the boy reveals that he is named Atal. Swain then promises to take the boy to Canada once the job is done, and though this surprises Jaya, she doesn't stop Swain immediately. Swain then tells Atal that it's paramount that he keep all of this a secret, and the boy promises instantly. Maluk then leads Atal away while Jaya talks with her team in private. She is baffled by the promise Swain just made, but to him, this is how things work. You have to help someone if they help you, and he learnt this from Jaya. After all, she offered Artemis refuge after she helped them all escape from the Bunting Islands. Before Jaya can offer a retort, they are all distracted by the sound of an American drone speeding speeding over their heads. This spooks Jaya once again, and this is when Nakai demands that Jaya come clean. She reveals that they aren't the only team in the area hunting the predator. The Americans have sent their own special ops team, codenamed the Stargazer, and they have state-of-the-art equipment at their disposal. She spotted their strike leader earlier, which is what had spooked her. 3 of her teammates, however, don't understand why this is a bad thing. If the Americans want to do their job for them, then they should let them do it, shouldn't they? However, this is when Jaya reveals that part of the reason she is funding this operation is to atone for her family's past sins. The Americans' primary objective is to retrieve alien technology. Hunting down the predator is their secondary objective. She then tells them about the American team currently carrying out a salvage operation on Kahua, and then tells them that to all the superpowers of the world, this is an arms race that her family has used in the past to profit. They didn't sell any weapons, but they did sell technology to the aerospace, microelectronics and materials industry. Since then, Jaya has vowed to prevent Yautja technology from getting into the wrong hands, which is why to her it's paramount that they get to the predator before their counterparts. She then gets a call on her satellite phone from another one of her Russian contacts, and she reveals to everyone that she has just been updated on the predator's lair. It's an old jihadi cave that the jihadis recently tried to recapture but failed miserably. She wants to leave for the location instantly and reach there before it's dark. The searing heat of this area will help mask their heat signatures, which will give them a significant advantage. She apologizes for keeping her true motivations under wraps, but her 3 teammates don't really care. They might as well get over it. The last panel of this issue shows the predator looking down into the valley from the top of a mountain. Predator. Hunters 2, issue number 3, Mountains of Madness. We start this issue with an American Black Ops team currently navigating the Hindu Kush Mountains in their shoppers. Their mission is simple: to procure all the alien tech that they can get their hands on. The exotic is secondary, but they have the permission to terminate him if necessary. Our protagonists, Maluk and Atal, meanwhile, are driving through the mountains while making small talk. Atal talks about what he's going to do when he reaches Canada. Maluk appreciates the luxury of the new vehicle, and this carries on until Jaya hears choppers approaching their position. She quickly orders Maluk to stop the truck, and when she gets out, she spots the 3 American choppers of the Black Ops team heading in the same direction as them. This is it. They have been made, and in Jaya's head, the Americans have already confiscated the tech that she was trying to protect. Nakai joins her outside and says her concerns out loud. However, this is when Atal reassures them that the Americans are headed in the wrong direction. He points to the northwest instead and tells them all that the Jinn's lair is a few miles in that direction instead. After travelling most of the way with their truck, they will eventually have to make the rest of the journey on foot. Jaya simply thinks that the kid is wrong. After all, what are the chances that her Russian source was incorrect? This is when Atal chimes in and explains the journey to her, and how where she was headed is just a jihadi base where the Jinn likes to occasionally hunt. However, this is when Atal makes the mistake of including himself in the group that will be making their way all the way to the cave. Naturally, everyone expresses their apprehension about leading a young kid to a predator's lair, and though they're right, Atal has his own arguments. Even if Atal pointed them in the right direction, without him, Jaya, Swain, Mandy and Nakai would keep travelling in circles in these mountains. These mountains are a maze that requires a guide, and Atal is their only bet for now. We then switch to the Americans as their men fast rope down into the valley near the cave they are targeting. The colonel in charge assures his men that they have the advantage due to the area's heat, which will essentially render the predator's thermal vision useless. They then warily approach the cave entrance and, upon making sure that everything is clear, they slowly head inside. They use night vision to navigate the dark, and they are quite surprised to find a dead jihadi inside. However, when they continue deeper, they find the entire cave floor riddled with dead bodies and blood. This was the site of a massacre that is too fresh to forget. The cave is quite extensive with multiple levels, but in every nook and cranny they search, all they find are dead jihadis. There's no human equipment, let alone alien tech to gather, and once the soldiers report this in, it naturally pisses the colonel off. He orders his men to head back so that they can leave this hellhole. However, when the choppers arrive to pick them up, one of them gets blasted out of the air by the predator's plasma caster. Their exotic is here, and he's hungry for blood. The Americans quickly jump into action, but the crashing helicopter is too much for them. It takes out most of the team as the colonel barely manages to escape the chaos while ordering the other choppers to retreat over the radio. However, this is when another barrage from the Predator's plasma caster takes most of his remaining team out, and as he orders his men to get down the mountain for better cover, we see the Predator finally jumping into action, albeit this time without his biohelmet because it's no use in this searing afternoon heat. Meanwhile, Atal impatiently waits outside the truck while our four protagonists get dressed in their hunting gear. Inside the truck, the tension is palpable because, like last time, their plan this time also relies a lot on luck. She is hoping for the lair to be empty so that they can rig it with explosives and trap the Yautja inside. They also don't know for sure if the Predator will be in the cave in the first place, and a lot of this mission relies heavily on Atal. Swain expresses his concerns as well. However, this is when Jaya defends herself by reminding Swain that he needs to make sure that he doesn't choke in the heat of the moment this time. When they step out, Atal tells them that it's imperative that they get going ASAP so that they can get back before nightfall. The plan is now revealed. Maluk will stay here with the truck while the rest of them travel on foot. Swain once again implores Atal to stay behind with Maluk, and this is when the kid bravely tells him that he isn't scared. After all, he's not the one with the weapon. This seems to be a jab at the Yautja honor code, and it seems to imply that Atal has figured out that the Predators don't attack unarmed potential prey, especially women and children. We then head to Kahua Island, where the Americans have finished scouring the island. They haven't found anything, and as two scientists in hazmat suits discuss the futility of this mission, a disembodied hand breaks out of the rubble nearby, while someone underneath it begs for help. We then see Swain struggling to keep up with the rest of the group due to the altitude. However, before this becomes an issue, they are distracted by the huge explosions on the mountain range across the valley. This is when our three protagonists begin doubting their actions again. What if the Americans found the Predator? What if they are stealing alien tech right now? Or what if they are fighting the jihadis in the cave there? Which means that the four of them are headed for a face-to-face confrontation with the Predator. And the third option is even worse. What if Atal is wrong? What if they are simply running in circles? However, when Atal hears Nakai questioning his claims, he hits him in the torso with a crutch and explains that he wouldn't be leading them on a wild goose chase in the mountains, especially with a missing leg. This is when Swain steps in to defend Atal's claim, and ultimately, Jaya orders them all to continue the journey because that's the best they can do for now. There are half a dozen Americans remaining now, and as they try to regroup, the Predator picks them off one by one. The first victim gets stabbed through the neck with a combistic, and when his partner tries to check in on him, the Predator ambushes him using the chameleon field and then stabs him through the torso with his wrist blades. The remaining soldier near him is picked off as well, and as explosions continue around him, the Predator growls into the air while holding his two new trophies. Predator, Hunters 2, Issue Number 4, The End of the Game. Around half a dozen American soldiers remain, including the colonel, and they desperately rush from cover to cover to avoid the plasma caster fire that narrowly misses them each time. The young soldiers want to fight back, but their colonel knows that they've lost the battle. This is when one of them gets the idea to order an air assault to flatten this area and hopefully kill the Predator in it. He quickly grabs the radio and orders an air assault, and seconds later, a huge bomb is dropped in the area by their aerial team. However, the Yautja spots the planes flying in and quickly runs to cover. It seems that years of operating in a war-torn area have taught the Yautja more about modern human warfare. The preceding explosion engulfs the entire mountain, and the tremors are felt by our team on the other side of the valley. Atal implores them to keep walking, and this is when Swain expresses that he doesn't like their route. They are out in the open, and they could be easily picked off by jihadi snipers. However, this is when Atal tells them that jihadis don't come this far. They fear the jinn, and there's no one coming from Pakistan on the other side because of the canyon. As for the valley below, it is filled with landmines, the same Russian landmines that took Atal's leg. He points down below and shows Swain the red flags he has planted in the minefield over the past few years. People in his village call him crazy, but Atal has been doing this to make sure no other kid has to suffer the same fate as him. Swain puts his hand around the kid and tells him that he is too brave for this world, and this seems to make Atal happy. Nakai and Mandy, meanwhile, have been growing closer to each other, and when Nakai jokes that Atal might be leading them to the djinn in order to feed him, Mandy jokes back that she would be okay with that. They all then spot the cave, which is supposedly the djinn's lair, and this is when Jaya reminds Swain that it's time. Swain stops Atal, gets on his knees, and begs the kid to make his way back to Maluk. They can take care of things from here. Atal, however, wants to stay and help, but this is when Swain tells him that he has done his job, and now it's time for them to do theirs. Swain makes sure Atal is walking away before joining the group, and as they enter the cave, Jaya orders them to get their night vision ready. When they walk inside, they realise that Atal was telling the truth. Inside the cave is a huge Yautja ship, totally intact, and when they walk behind it, they find the Predator's trophy room. It is full of junk the Predator has gathered over the years: bikes, weapons, ammo, uniforms, random gear, and tons of human skulls. Human skulls line every inch of the cave wall. Everywhere you look, you are sure to spot a skull, and this is when Swain spots something familiar among the skulls: a cap belonging to one of his own teammates. KRB Security was the private firm that had employed them, and this means that this is the same Predator that murdered his entire team a few years ago. With a heavy heart, Swain kneels down, picks up the cap and wears it for old time's sake. This fight has just become personal, and Swain is going to make sure that it ends in his favour this time. Seeing what Swain is going through, Jaya orders Mandy and Nakai to set up the explosives, and both of them follow through without another word. Once the explosives have been set, they position themselves on top of the rocks outside the cave's entrance and wait for the Predator. Jaya knows that the sun is going down, but she is hoping that the rocks are still hot enough to mask their thermal signatures. She has been relying on luck a lot through this entire mission, which is why it seems to be running out right now, because unfortunately for the team, the rocks are cool enough and the Predator has just spotted them hiding outside his lair. He has survived the bomb blast, albeit with a broken biohelmet, which only adds to his terrifying appearance. The Predator quickly aims his plasma caster, and this is when Swain notices the laser target on the rock beside him. Swain was just wondering how they shouldn't be out here while the temperature drops, but now it's no use. They've been made, and he manages to narrowly leap away as an explosion incinerates his former position. The three of them quickly use their own thermal vision to spot the Predator and then fire back in unison. Some of the bullets find their mark, but the rest bounce off his former, and their gunfire is no match for his plasma caster. And unfortunately, this means that Mandy and Nakai are cornered on one end of the entrance while Jaya finds cover on the other side. It's only Swain who has a somewhat decent vantage point, and after weighing their chances and the precarious position of their friends, Swain and Jaya decide to trigger the explosives. Boom! The entire cave is blown to pieces, the entrance is sealed, and the Yautja ship is destroyed with it. Swain continues to fire at the Predator. However, due to the explosion, he too has been cornered in a different direction, just like his friends. Swain is desperate for a way out, and this is when Atal shows up to help him. He offers Swain the idea of leading the Predator in the minefield below them. Atal knows his way through it, and Swain can follow his every step while leading the djinn to his demise. Swain hates to put Atal's life in danger, but right now he doesn't have any other choice, and he wants to save his friends as well. But even before Swain can say a word, Atal takes off running, and Swain is forced to walk into the open. He fires at the Predator and calls it out. Swain curses the creature and keeps firing at it until the Predator is visibly pissed. His friends are surprised by this sudden move, but with the Predator bounding towards him, Swain has no choice but to follow Atal into the minefield. Swain makes sure that he is between Atal and the creature, and when he is sufficiently close to the mines, Swain fires a few bullets at him, but unfortunately, this is when he runs out. Realizing that it's now or never, Swain positions himself near a known landmine, pulls out his knife, and then screams at the Predator, "Fine, you ugly! We do this Texas style!" The Predator acknowledges the challenge, mimics Swain's voice, and says Texas style as he unsheathes his own wrist blades. The Predator leaps at Swain, and this is when Swain willingly falls back. As expected, the creature steps on the landmine, and both of them are instantly rocked by an explosion. explosion. The predator is torn to pieces, but Swain is mortally wounded as well. Atal rushes to him, and Swain is finally happy that he was able to kill the predator. He tells the kid that the creature killed a lot of his friends. He was supposed to die with his friends, and now, after all these years, he will finally get to join them. Atal begins to cry as he realizes Swain is about to die, and the latter wipes the kid's tears away and tells him that he wants to enjoy the moment. He wants to listen to the wind. As the sun finally sets over the Himalayas, Swain sadly passes away. Mandy and Nakai stare aimlessly into the fire, while Jaya helps Atal cover Swain's body with rocks in the background. They create a makeshift grave for Swain, while a shaken-up Nakai questions the sheer nature of his recent actions and why he is hunting the predators in the first place. Mandy nonchalantly tells him that they both do it because they are stupid, and then forces him to focus on what comes next. They walk back to Atal and Swain, as the kid says that he feels bad for leaving Swain in the mountains without completing his final rites. Despite this, something inside Atal tells him that Allah is going to look after Swain. This is when Jaya puts a hand on his shoulder and offers the kid a home on her island. He can live there, and once he is of age, he can decide what he wants to do with his life. But Atal has changed his mind now. His friend is going to be in Afghanistan forever, and Atal wants to stay with him. He doesn't want to leave Swain behind. He'll stay here and visit his friend often so that he is never alone. On the drive back, our four protagonists encounter the remaining American soldiers aimlessly walking on the road. Maluk stops the car out of courtesy, and Jaya waves to the colonel. However, when the colonel doesn't wave back, they leave the soldiers stranded in the middle of the road and drive away. A few days later, they arrive back on the island and are heartily greeted by Artemis. She asks about Swain, but the three of them decide it's best to discuss Swain's fate later in the day. Artemis then forces them to leave their bags on the docks to head inside because she has a surprise for them. And what a surprise it is! When Mandy, Jaya and Nakai walk into the study, they find an injured and bandaged Rafael Herrera waiting for them. He sheepishly greets them and tells them that the tale of how he survived the entire ordeal in the Bunting Islands is quite a story. Predator Hunters 3, Issue Number 1, God's Plan. This issue starts by showing us Rafael Herrera's past and how he ended up face to face with a predator in the jungle while the entire operation was being ambushed by the authorities. This scene is contrasted by Herrera's modern-day narration, where he wishes for a different life, a life in which his father was kind to him, a life where he wasn't brought up in the criminal underbelly. What would that life have been like? The only thing Herrera's sure about is the fact that if he had lived that life, he wouldn't have survived his encounter with the predator. The authorities are blowing apart Herrera's huge facility in the jungle, while Herrera, along with some of his men, escapes into the trees. Soon, his men fall, and Herrera is left hiding behind a tree all by himself as the authorities approach to arrest him. At this moment, Herrera had accepted his fate, had accepted God and his sins which had led to this end. But then, out of nowhere, a plasmacaster blast blew everyone away. Next, a smart disc whizzes through the air and takes apart most of the soldiers until it eventually lodges itself in the tree behind which Herrera hides. This is when, according to Herrera, while he prayed to God, the Lord showed him the devil in the flesh. It was the predator, as it ripped out the skull and spine of one of its latest victims. But this is when Raphael found his courage. He stepped out from behind the tree and shot the predator directly in the face multiple times. This killed the creature instantly, but Herrera knew in that moment that this battle was far from over. With the same blank expression with which Herrera stared at the creature back then is the same one Herrera now sports as he endlessly stares at the horizon from the beach. Mandy, Nakai and Jaya are worried about him, but they don't blame him. Each of them too would endlessly stare at the horizon after going through Herrera's ordeal. However, this is when Nakai makes a valid point. How did Herrera get out? The Special Ops Unit designed by the Americans to hunt down predators, Stargazer, wouldn't just let an important person like Herrera leave after nursing him back to life. After all, Herrera is a drug trafficker. Even if they can't nail him for being a part of Jaya's team, they can surely get him prosecuted. This is when Mandy angrily lashes out and defends Raphael. After all, he is one of the oldest members of the team, and Nakai is a recent recruit. He doesn't get to talk about his seniors that way. Jaya chimes in and breaks up their fight. She then says that Nakai has a valid point. They know as much about Stargazer as it knows knows about them, so why let Herrera go? Jaya wants to get to the bottom of this, so without wasting any time, she decides that it's best to confront Herrera about this right now. She walks out to the beach and strikes up a conversation with him. Herrera is awfully stoic, and Jaya apologizes to him again for assuming that he was dead back on Kahua. Herrera calmly tells her that she doesn't need to apologize. He'd assumed himself dead as well after being captured, and if he were in Jaya's place, he would have done the same thing. He then reveals that he knows why she's here, but why would Stargazer simply let him leave? But this is a question that haunts Herrera himself. He too is confounded by this bizarre event, and all he has figured out is the fact that people tend to work in mysterious ways. Herrera once again is lost in his past, and he says that even though God let him live back then, Herrera knew that he wasn't finished with him yet. Herrera returned to his mansion 2 days later, hoping things had calmed down. As expected, it was empty, and the only light in the mansion was coming from the living room. Even before Herrera had opened the door, he knew what he would find inside, and his eyes only confirmed the same. His family had been killed, his wife and 2 daughters' throats were sliced, and they were hung from the ceilings like animals. Whether it was his rivals, the police, or both, it didn't matter to him. Herrera knew that his family had paid for his sins, and he would one day have to pay for theirs. This moment of finding his family strung upside down now means much more to Herrera, because to him it is contrasted by the time he was strung by the predators on Kahua. Just like his family, Herrera had expected a brutal death, but the predators simply sliced his ear off and trapped him in a cage. Perhaps the predators wanted vengeance piece by piece. Perhaps they wanted to torture him to prolong his anguish. It would have been a fitting consideration considering Herrera's sins. But no, the Lord wasn't done with him yet. Herrera was freed from his cage once the self-destruct device was triggered, and as Herrera stared into the newly formed crater on the island, he accepted the fact that death and destruction followed him no matter what he did. Herrera tells Jaya that he doesn't understand the lesson that God is trying to teach him, but he understands that the predators bring nothing but misery to Earth, which is why his sole focus right now is on hunting them down. We then see a mysterious Russian operative arriving in Belize by boat. She runs a tight-knit team, and as soon as they touch land, she orders them to keep their heads on a swivel, because they aren't the only ones after the prize here. This is when another mysterious man is introduced. He is huge, perched on an unambiguous building, currently keeping a close eye on the Russian operative and her team through a pair of binoculars. He then takes out his satellite phone, calls someone, and then requests them to reach Belize immediately. Turns out that this is one of Jaya's contacts, and she is surprised by the sudden urgency of the call. We then see a group of drug smugglers slowly making their way down the river with a huge shipment. Upon reaching their destination, they disembark, and one of the men drops the merchandise. The ensuing conversation between them reveals that they are all on the edge, and this isn't a team, just a group of opportunistic men doing what it takes to put food on the table. As they continue their journey deeper into the jungle, one of them spots something in the trees. At first, the others don't believe him, but then a second guy spots something in the nearby bushes. By the time they read themselves, they are hit by a barrage of bullets that instantly takes out all of them. Only the guy who was being made fun of by everyone decides to stay out of the fight and surrender instead. Their rival then emerges from the woods, and their leader says, "You are wise to surrender, no need to take a bullet." However, instead of accepting the man's surrender, he decapitates him. After this, he takes a selfie with the decapitated head. However, seconds later, every one of them is spooked when someone mimics their leader's voice from the trees and says, "You are wise to surrender." The smugglers think that this is another rival gang mocking them before the ambush, and they are partly right. It is an ambush. However, this is no rival gang, simply a predator. The predator starts by ripping a hole in the leader's chest using his plasma caster. We then get a glimpse at a new predator weapon, an arrowhead attached to a retractable rope. The predator uses this to stab another man through the neck and then pulls him up into the trees. Then another one of them gets killed by a combistic, and as the predator reveals himself, we see that only one of the smugglers has managed to escape. He is near a water body, frantically looking around when suddenly another predator emerges from the water and drags him below. Predator, Hunters 3, issue number 2, Under the Jungle. We are now introduced to 3 new characters, Kim, Donnie, and Tamara, 3 avid adventurers who love diving. Kim recently found a secret spot under the recently discovered Mayan pyramid, which is where she is leading her friends currently. It's raining heavily, which is in their favour because the authorities have stopped the excavation efforts during the rainy season. This means that they will be able to enter the restricted area without any issues. Kim warns her friends that the limestone caverns below stretch for miles and that it's a whole new world underwater. Today, they will only be exploring a little bit of the caverns and will be visiting the secret place that Kim has been telling them about. The 3 put on their gear and jump into the water, and we see that the world underneath is totally isolated from the land above. It has preserved ancient structures and is riddled with stalactites and stalagmites. Once they surface, Kim shows them a hidden pocket of air that has been untouched for centuries. It's beautiful, but also grim, because beside them is the skeleton of a 1,000-year-old Mayan that was part of a ritual sacrifice. This is when Donnie walks deeper into the cave and discovers something. One of the tall stalagmites in the cave has a fresh skull perched on top of it. Tamara and Kim find this odd. Who could have placed it here? Because if it were placed thousands of years ago, it would have had calcium deposits on it. But this skull is pristine. As Donnie walks further, he discovers an entire wall full of skulls with bones and backpacks placed underneath it. Naturally, this spooks Tamara and Donnie, and they beg Kim to leave instantly, but Kim has a sneaking suspicion. She takes her knife and pries one of the packages open, which confirms her suspicions. These packets are full of drugs. Tamara is now interested in the mystery, but Donnie is panicking more and more with each passing second, and this is when a Yautja decloaks near them and mimics Donnie's voice, where he says, "Can we please get the hell out of here?" Side note, the 2 Yautja in this volume can be differentiated by their mask colour. One has a silver mask and the other has a brown mask. So from now on, we will be referring to the Yautja by their mask colour so that you can easily differentiate between the 2. Kim knows that they should remain calm in this situation, so she orders her friends to back up and put their hands up in the air. But Donnie isn't thinking straight. He pulls out his knife and tries to act brave by jumping between the girls and the Predator. However, this is when Silver Mask stabs him through the heart with the combo stick, which instantly kills him. Kim then tries to rush for the stash of rifles nearby. However, this is when Brown Mask emerges from the water and blasts a hole through her using his plasma caster. Only Tamara remains, and she is armed with what you would barely call a knife. And so, instead of fighting, Tamara drops her knife and dives into the water nearby without her gear. She'd rather drown than get killed by whatever these things are. However, this is when Silver Mask jumps into the water after her. He instantly catches up with her and then strangles her to death. When he emerges from the water, he brings back her swimming goggles as trophies. However, this is when Brown Mask shoves him and condemns his actions. Tamara was unarmed and a woman, and according to the Yautja code, they should have let her leave. But Silver Mask isn't about to back down so easily, and so both the Yautja unsheath their wrist blades and get ready to duel. Next, we see Jaya, Nakai, Mandy, and Herrera arriving in Belize, and they go to a local bar to meet their contact. Nakai quickly gets them a few drinks, and this is when he comments that Herrera is nowhere to be seen. This is when Jaya's contact walks in, and it is revealed that this is John Schaefer, Dutch Schaefer's brother. If you remember, Dutch Schaefer was played by Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 1987 movie Predator. He used to be in the NYPD before getting involved with predator hunting, and has, over the years, faced multiple Yautja and survived to tell the tale. Jaya introduces John to her associates, and as John introduces himself, he briefly tells them about his past. After Dutch's encounter with the Predator in the jungles, he has been missing, and John has been on his trail ever since. He's been following his brother for years, following rumours, and if Dutch is alive, it seems like he doesn't want to be found, but that doesn't make John give up. He then tells Mandy and Nakai that Jaya and he met when she tried to recruit John. Their first meeting didn't exactly go as planned, but eventually Jaya grew on him, and now they're friends, as well as each other's informants. He then tells them that over the years, he has learned that the Yautja like to hunt in Central and South America. Something about the weather is more appealing to them. He then tells them that Belize is prime cartel territory used to move merchandise all over the continent, which is why conflicts between rival gangs are frequent. But things have been weird lately. Authorities and the cartels have found skinned bodies hanging from the trees, a transgression neither side likes to commit. This has sparked rumours of demons and witches in the area, but all all of them know who's behind these killings. This is when Herrera joins them, and as always, Nakai is quite suspicious about him. He speculates that Herrera had maybe gone to make a phone call in order to snitch on them, and though Jaya shuts him down, John shares the same sentiment as Nakai. He knows Herrera is a celebrity among the police and the DEA. He has heard a lot about him, and none of the things he has heard are good. Mandy tries to defend Herrera once again. However, Herrera stops the entire confrontation by making a snide remark about cops. According to Herrera, the police always tend to harass you like this before they name their price. Cops, as you see, tend to make fine employees, according to him. This is when the mysterious Russian operative we saw earlier enters the bar with her team, and to no one's surprise, she is friends with John. Her name is Valentina Ligachev, and by the way she greets John, it seems the two have a history. She then coldly introduces herself to Jaya's crew, and like many others, she seems to hate Herrera because of his past. She then gets straight to the point. Valentina knows why Jaya and her team are here. It's the same reason why she was in Afghanistan and the Bunting Islands before. This annoys Jaya, and she realizes that John has been supplying intel to Valentina as well. However, this is when Valentina corrects Jaya. Like her, she too gets her intel from the same Russian hackers whom Jaya uses as sources. John tries to defuse the situation by offering everyone a drink, but Valentina vehemently declines. She is here to conduct business, and if Jaya and her crew get in her way, she won't be able to guarantee her safety. This is when Mandy joins the conversation and calls Valentina a whore, which doesn't sit too well with the latter, and she warns Mandy that she had better hope that this is going to be the last time they see each other. We then see men from the gang of smugglers who were ambushed by another gang tracking down the route their men took. They find their boats, missing merchandise, unused supplies, and no sign of violence. This means that the men planned on returning and were likely ambushed on their way into the woods. Soon, the men's leader finds bullets on the grounds and then decapitated, skinned bodies hung from the trees above. He vows to make their rival cartel pay for desecrating the bodies of his men. However, this is when a plasma caster blows him and his men away, which knocks him out instantly. When he wakes up, he discovers that all of his men have been slaughtered with gaping holes sticking through many of their bodies. He is further horrified when he watches Silver Mask claim one of his trophies right in front of his eyes. The leader quickly gathers himself, pulls out his knife and charges at Silver Mask. However, the next second, he is quickly decapitated and his head is carried off by the Yautja. In the bar, meanwhile, Mandy and Nakai are on the edge. They signed up to fight the Yautja, but not the Yautja and the Russians at the same time. This is when John tells them to calm down and relax. After all, Belize is one of the finest diving destinations in the world. In fact, the whole Yucatan Peninsula is laced with flooded limestone caverns, and the piece of information their Russian friends don't have is the fact that the war they are looking for isn't in the jungle, but instead underneath it. Predator Hunters 3, issue number 3. The arms race continues. Scenes of this issue are contrasted by Valentina's speech to her men. She rallies them up by talking about how they are on the forefront of war, a war that goes unnoticed, a war for alien weapons, and a war for supremacy. Nations from around the world are doing everything they can to get their hands on this technology, and if any of them get their hands on it before they do, it will be the doom for them all, which is why it is imperative for them to get this technology for Mother Russia, which will usher their nation into a new age of glory. Meanwhile, deep in the caves, Brown Mask is busy analysing and seemingly documenting his trophies using a holographic device. However, his seemingly calm activity is interrupted by Silver Mask, who shoves the recently decapitated head of the leader in his face. Brown Mask swats what seemed like an offering away, and this angers Silver Mask. He quickly unsheathes his wrist blades and puts them under Brown Mask's chin, but then he walks away as Brown Mask loudly growls in the background. Jaya, Nakai, Mandy and John, meanwhile, are headed to their hotel. It is a normal night with nothing out of the ordinary except for Nadia, who has been assigned by Valentina to tail Jaya's team. They sit on the stakeout all night, and their efforts pay off because in the middle of the night, Jaya and her team emerge from the hotel, get into the car and drive away. Nadia tails them at a safe distance for a while, and once they are away from the city, she reports her location to Valentina. Minutes later, Jaya and her team's car is stopped by a road blockade set up by Valentina and her men. However, when she peeks inside, she realizes that they have been tricked. People with the same stature as Jaya's team and the same clothes are in the same car, but they aren't who Valentina is looking for. The people inside pretend to be a family of 5 heading out for the San Ignacio Jungle Waterfall cruise, but Valentina knows better. These have clearly been hired by John to put her off their scent. She orders her men to quickly search the car and their belongings, but after searching extensively, they find nothing out of the ordinary. We then see Jaya and her team boarding a pickup truck and hastily leaving the hotel before Valentina discovers their trick. Nakai complains about having to sit in the back of the truck with Mandy and Herrera, and before another fight can break out between him and Mandy, John speeds away with a jerk to lighten the mood. John eventually leads them on a trail in the woods, and when they arrive at the intended location, they start wearing their wetsuits. Nakai is cribbing again, this time because he hates diving and is scared of the water. Once they are geared up, John leads them into a cave and tells them that the underwater cavern system of this cave connects to the recently discovered Mayan pyramid, the same pyramid where a lot of people have gone missing recently. John believes that the 2 Yautja's base is somewhere near the pyramid, and this is when the entire team is shocked because John never told them that there were 2 predators in this area. They dive into the water and slowly follow John as he leads them deeper and deeper. Eventually, they stumble upon Tamara's body, which causes them to visibly groan and freak out underwater. Above ground, meanwhile, Valentina seems to have narrowed down the same location and is slowly leading a small army that is armed to the teeth towards it. Her men wait, stalk, and proceed every inch of the forest, slowly making their way closer and closer to the pyramid, while ensuring they aren't ambushed by the Yautja. Jaya's team, meanwhile, finally emerges from the water and quickly finds tracks in the mud leading deeper into the cave. Everyone instantly quiets down, and they all use hand signals to scout the area around them. The stalagmite with the skull on it is near them, and it doesn't take them long to find the Predator's trophy room. Nakai, Jaya, John, and Herrera discuss how they are going to proceed. However, this is when Mandy discovers something peculiar which catches their attention. It's an opening that leads deeper and more underground into the cave, and the tracks seemingly lead into it. They discover debris on the ground, and it doesn't take long for them to figure out that this is an artificial path likely carved by the Yautja. However, when they reach the other end of the opening, everyone's jaws drop to the floor because in front of them is a hidden chamber with Mayan structures leading back to the surface that has likely been untouched for the past 1,000 years. And though the sight is mesmerizing, it is quickly diminished by the sudden stench of rotting corpses coming from the water. Dozens of corpses fill the ancient well, and on the other side of it, John discovers fresh blood on the floor leading outside. They follow a narrow path and soon discover a hidden opening that leads back to the surface. The predators have been busy digging, which means this is more than a landing site to them. Jaya thinks this is a perfect location for an ambush. The corridor is narrow and the opening is hidden. The Yautja won't even know what hit them. The rain will make them more visible, even when they are cloaked, and the moving foliage at the entrance will also give their position away. We then see Valentina's crew nearing the pyramid, and we are once again introduced to new Yautja tech mounted high above a tree. It functions like a motion detector and a camera, and instantly alerts Silver Mask when Valentina and her team are in the vicinity. The 2 predators are perched on top of the pyramid, and it seems that they have been expecting this attack. Predator, Hunters 3, issue number 4, God's Message. And so we start the last issue with a serene look at the seemingly empty Mayan pyramid as Valentina and her crew navigate through the forest inch by inch while keeping an eye out for any threats. This is when it is revealed that the new gadget from last issue is more than a motion detector and a camera. It is also a remotely controlled drone that detonates on impact. Valentina and her crew, however, find out about this the hard way after one of them gets blown to pieces, then another and another. It quickly turns into a massacre, and while her men panic and scramble around, Valentina quickly screams to rally them. She tells them to find cover and then fire downrange while focusing on the gaps in the trees. Silver and Brown Mask, meanwhile, observe the entire entire assault from the high ground as the soldiers roughly start firing in their direction. The sound of this firefight is heard by Jaya and her group, and though John doesn't really like the Russians, Valentina is a different thing. They have a past, she is his friend, and the fact that she managed to find this location so fast means that she is good. John reasons that, for old time's sake, he is going to have to save her, and when Jaya realizes that he won't be stopping, she decides to accompany him, along with Nakai. Mandy and Herrera will stay behind to man the ambush, and hopefully, more feet on the ground will force the Yautja into the opening where they will be waiting. Valentina, meanwhile, switches to her thermal goggles, and once she has spotted the two predators, she quickly announces their position to her team and then orders them to use the grenade launcher. The ensuing explosion finally forces Silver and Brown Mask to join the fight. Nakai and Jaya break off from John, meanwhile. The plan is for John to find Valentina and rescue her, while Nakai and Jaya hold down the area around the secret entrance, keeping an eye out for the predators. However, as soon as John runs out of the entrance, he is quickly spotted, and a plasma caster blast misses him by inches. It, however, sends him flying into a tree while his rifle flies in the other direction. Silver Mask jumps down and tries to stab John in the head, but he narrowly manages to avoid the strike. Silver Mask then tries to stab him with his wrist blades, but John avoids that as well. However, before John can get out of range, he is kneed in the chest. He then somehow manages to reach his rifle, only for Silver Mask to then stomp on it and break off the magazine. He then picks John up by his vest, who coyly moves his hand to his knife and unsheathes it. He then stabs Silver Mask through the arm, and when he is dropped to the ground, he stabs Silver Mask in the leg. Silver Mask smacks John away, which sends him tumbling down from the tree, but Silver Mask is clearly hurt. He removes his mask and gets ready to take his life, but Brown Mask finds him in the nick of time and stops him from doing so. He then carries Silver Mask towards the pyramid while the latter continues to argue with him. Mandy and Herrera, meanwhile, spot the predators heading in their direction, but instead of heading towards the entrance where they are stationed, the predators begin climbing the pyramid instead. Herrera decides that it's now or never, and he has to face the predators now if he is to atone for his sins. He manages to convince Mandy to stay behind and to trust him like she always has, and then takes off running after Silver and Brown Mask. At the top, Brown Mask triggers a distress beacon from his wrist gauntlet, and Silver Mask is enraged by him. Likely, according to him, he shouldn't get to go home because he has been mortally wounded. So after a loud scream, he uses this chance to activate the self-destruct device on his gauntlet in hopes of taking down everything and everyone with him. Brown Mask is baffled by Silver Mask's actions, and he quickly leaps at his comrade. The two wrestle as the beeping of the self-destruct device continues to increase in the background. Eventually, Silver Mask manages to stab Brown Mask in the shoulder with his wrist blades, and this is when Brown Mask has had enough. He unsheathes his own wrist blades and stabs Silver Mask directly through the chin. He then manages to turn off the self-destruct device in the nick of time. This is when Herrera shows up, and he hesitates for a moment, and this moment of hesitation was maybe divine because the next thing Herrera sees causes him to drop his rifle on the ground. In the air is a huge Yautja mothership that turns the sky above them dark. As the ship approaches the top of the pyramid, Herrera begins to recite his prayers while being routed to the spot. The ship's doors open, and out steps a Yautja clan, whose leader is heavily adorned with trophies from head to toe. On his neck, he wears an ancient holy cross, and this symbolism is seemingly God's answer for Herrera. He stares at his own cross around his neck, while the clan leads Silver Mask's body and Brown Mask away. The ship flies away without any incident, and the war seemingly ends here. Jaya isn't disappointed, but Valentina is livid. The mission is a failure. She lost 4 good men, and she now will have to give Jaya and her group a ride back to town because they came to her aid. That night, the group is relaxing in the bar, and though Jaya tries to recruit John again, he politely declines. To him, finding Dutch is his first priority. Once he has found his brother, maybe he will join the group. He then takes his leave, but before leaving, he exposes Herrera to the entire group. Though Mandy tries to defend Herrera once again, he decides to come clean instead. He reveals that Stargazer did not let him go easily. They threatened to prosecute him if he did not spy on Jaya and her team for them. He agreed to their terms. He was supposed to to report back to them after returning from this mission. But Herrera isn't going to do that anymore, not after what he witnessed today. To Herrera, his entire life has been about deceit, and he has now decided to stop. God has sent him a message, and so his betrayal of Stargazer is the last betrayal he is going to commit in life. For the rest of his life, he is going to be in misery and atone for his sins. Nakai understands Herrera for the first time, and now that he has come clean, he forgives the man, and the two clink their glasses while cheering to atonement.